Hello sustainable growers! In this video we will talk about pH in aquaponics. We will see what is the pH. It's composed of two different elements, the GH and the KH. We will understand what are those two different parts of the pH. We will see how to manage those different elements, what are the particularities of those elements, and we will see how to regulate the pH in aquaponics. So in this video you will learn everything about the pH and you will be able to manage your pH in your own aquaponics setup. Don't forget that you can have access to a free guide to build your own aquaponics setup in the description of the video just below if you are watching this video on YouTube. In the description of the video you will also find a lot of other bonus such as a special video to keep your vegetables green, strong and healthy. So after this video just have a look in the description and you will have access to all those free bonus to really be able to manage your aquaponics setup in the best conditions. So first I think it's important to remind you what is the pH. The pH of the water, some people say water is very acidic or is very alkaline or basic, but actually the pH is the potential of hydrogen. So it's basically the quantity of hydrogen that is available into the water. So it's either hydrogen or hydroxide. So hydrogen is H+, and hydroxide is OH-. So when we talk about low pH, we are talking about a pH that is below 7. So most of the time in aquaponics we can see a pH around 6. Very rarely 5, it never goes below 5, but 6.5 is quite common. A pH that is basic is more like above 7, such as 7.5, 8. And then in aquaponics generally you don't see an extreme, you never see below 6 or above 8. And our aim in aquaponics is to control, to balance the pH and to maintain it around 7. So pH is actually a logarithm, right? So the pH is equal to a minus logarithm of H3O+. So a pH that is going from 7 to 6, when it's at 6 it's 10 times more acidic than when it's at 7. So it's not because it's moved by 1 that we have to think, oh, that's not much. It's actually a big move, right? And if you move from 7 to 5, then you move 100 times. So that's a huge jump. So we have to be careful of that. We have to keep in mind that any fluctuation of pH is going to affect our fish in aquaponics and also obviously the bacteria. So in aquaponics, our pH is influenced by two parameters that we can calculate. We got the GH, general hardness, and the KH, the carbonate hardness. And all together it makes the pH that we all know. So the carbonate hardness of your water is going to be influenced by the quantity of carbonate you got into your water. So we will see that this quantity of carbonate is going to have an impact on the buffering of the pH. So simply it means that if you have a lot of KH, a KH that is very high into your water, you're going to have very low pH fluctuations. This is what we want basically. We want to avoid the pH to go up and down because this is what is affecting the fish very much. You know, it's better to have a pH that is quite constant, even if it's a bit high. Even if you have to maintain your pH at 7.5, it's better to maintain your pH at 7.5 than having a pH that is going up at 8 and then down at 6 and then up at 8 again. So we're going to try in aquaponics to maintain a carbonate level that is quite high, not very high, but above 4, to basically avoid those fluctuations of pH. The other part of the pH, which is what we call the general hardness of the water, it's composed more of calcium, magnesium, so all those kind of ions that are into the water as that are going to make your water very hard or the opposite without any minerals. So the more minerals you add into your water generally and the more GH is going to increase. So you see that the pH is a combination of those two elements. but you can have a pH that is quite high. But if it's only composed of GH and not KH, as soon as you're going to have a little nitrification into your water, the pH is going to drop very quickly because there is no buffering effect. On the other way, if you got a pH that is mostly composed of KH, if you got a high KH and a low GH, in this case, you're going to have a very high buffering effect, and you can add a lot of acidity into the water. The pH is not going to drop very easily. So you got this kind of buffering effect. You can imagine a kind of sponge, and this sponge is composed of the KH, right? So you can put some acid on this sponge. The sponge is going to contain all the acid until the sponge is full of acid, and once it's full of acid, just add 1 drop more of acid and the pH is completely going to crash very quickly. So that's why it's very tricky. A lot of people are using acid to lower the pH, but be very careful of the quantity of acid that you put, because at the beginning you are not going to see the pH moving. At one point you're going to reach the full capacity of this sponge. Basically you're going to cover the KH, and the pH is going to drop at once. So you have to be very careful if you use pure acid. So here I will try to take a representation of the KH with a sponge. So we have to imagine that the KH is a sponge, because it really acts as a sponge. So that's what I want to show you from a visual point of view today. So I'm going to use some colorant today, some blue colorant, which is organic colorant, food grade. We're going to use this colorant to represent some acid that we would add into our water to modify the pH, basically. So I'm just going to prepare a mix of water with the colorant. So here, imagine that's your fish tank. The general idea is that you got your fish tank with a certain pH, and you want to add some acid inside to decrease the pH, or you want to add some basic alkaline solution inside to increase the pH. So imagine this is your solution. So if we want to decrease the pH, we just want to add some acid inside, and therefore you're going to see the color of the pH that is going to be modified, right? That's exactly what happened when I put some colorant here. You can see that now the water in my fish tank is becoming blue, so it affects the pH, right? So now we're going to choose the experience, but with a water with a high KH. So the KH, as you know, can be represented by a sponge. So I'm going to put a sponge into this tank, on top of this tank, right? So here we are, a nice sponge. And now I'm going to drop my solution, which is either very acidic or very alkaline. And we're going to see that obviously the KH that is here is absorbing this substance. So basically when you try to modify your pH, at the beginning you don't have much fluctuations. You see, the sponge is absorbing everything, and then after a while it starts to release a little bit, so it modifies a little bit the pH. So by adding the solution into your water, you may think, okay, the pH is not moving much, I'm going to add way more. And this time what is happening is that the KH is saturated, and you see that all the substance is going directly into the water, and then the pH moves. So all is to say that the KH is really good because it balances the pH. It tries to maintain the pH where it is. But be careful, because once it's saturated, you got the pH of your water that is going to move very quickly then. And that's what happens most of the time. People try to put acid into the setup, and it turns out at the beginning it doesn't have any action because there is a KH that is here, and once they saturate the KH, the pH moves very, very quickly in one way or another. So if it's acid, it's going to be extremely acid, and here they're going to kill the fish, or they're going to kill the bacteria, or both. So yeah, that's very, very important. That's to keep in mind. Now that we saw what is exactly the pH and what is it composed of, we're going to see how we can act on the pH. So if you're a beginner, don't be afraid by all those terms. It's quite simple. Normally when you begin aquaponics, if you follow my videos and if you follow my recommendations, I give a lot of tricks to select the good media. So if you follow my recommendation and if you select the good media for your aquaponics setup, the pH is only going to go in one direction. It means that it's only going to decrease with the time, because there are some nitrification reactions into our grow beds, thanks to the bacteria, and therefore the pH is always going down. So the only action you will have to do is basically to raise the pH sometimes 2 times. So to raise the pH, it's quite simple. You can simply add some eggshells into your water. I personally use also seashells and also a source of aragonite and a mix of other minerals from basically the cuttlefish bones, the squid bones, cuttlefish bones, all those kind of bones. Some people use them for the birds, but you can definitely use them for your aquaponics setup, and they are really good source of minerals, and they're going to increase both the KH and the GH of your water, which means that it's going to decrease those variation of pH during the day, and it's going to maintain your pH at a good level. So we are aiming often for a pH at 7, but if you have a setup that is running really well, you got a lot of biological reactions happening into the setup, so the pH is always decreasing quite fast. So when we raise the pH, we allow ourselves to go to 7.2, 7 up to 7.5, depending on the species of vegetables you have. 7.5 is accepted by most vegetables, and therefore it allows us to breathe a bit. You don't have to add minerals too often into your setup. So that's one technique, to add some shells. If you have a setup that is very, very low in terms of pH, I'm talking about 6 or 6.5, but really you really need to raise it quickly, you can simply use sodium carbonate. So sodium carbonate is a powder that you can buy from the shop. It's what we put in the cakes. That's a raising powder. So it's completely fine. It's only sodium and carbonate. And as I just said before, the carbonate are composing the KH. So when you add some baking powder into your systems, you basically increase the KH of your water. So you increase the stability of the pH, and you increase the pH by the same time. You don't want to have your pH composed of only KH. You want also to add some other minerals, because the plants need some minerals. So you need to give them the minerals. You need to put a blend of minerals into the system. I made a special video about this topic. It's a bonus video, and you can find it from the description of this video here below. You will find a link to what I call the bonus video, which is a video that will help you to keep your vegetables strong, green and healthy. The way to do it is to add some minerals into your water. So you can use, obviously, we talked about the eggshell, and we talked about the sodium carbonate to increase the pH of your water. It's very, very simple. Then if you want to add limestone or other things, you can, but be careful when you add something into the setup. If it's a lot of very small particles, put it into a stocking or into a bag that you can remove when the pH reaches the level that you want. If you mix it with the media and the pH raised at 8, then you can't remove it. That will be a problem. So whatever you do, if you use little particles, put them into a stocking. If you follow my recommendations regarding the pH, you will always have to only increase the pH. Now, if you made a mistake, if you didn't follow my recommendations to build your aquaponics setup, and you build your setup and you put a media that contains limestone, which is a source of KH, your pH is always going to be very, very high, or at least at 7.5, 8, and sometimes way higher. And in this case, it's very, very difficult to decrease the pH. And the reason why is because you got a source of limestone into your media. So if you have limestone into your media, the only way to basically remove this limestone is to remove the whole media and to replace it. Some people add acid into the setup. I just talked about it just before, when I talked about the KH. Obviously you got this sponge, right? The KH, that is a big sponge. So when you add acid into your aquaponics setup, the sponge is going to absorb all this acid, and basically you are not going to see the pH dropping, or you see it dropping for a few minutes and then it goes back up again, because basically the limestone is dissolving itself into the water and is always maintaining the pH very high. So the pH is going to be high as well. So by adding some acid, some people think, oh, okay, I'm going to add more acid, and they add more, until the point where basically the sponge is completely full, and then the pH drops, but it drops at once. And if your pH drop, it's gonna create two things. First, it's gonna stress the fish, but the big problem you have also is that you're gonna kill the bacteria. You know that the bacteria, they like a pH that is a little bit high. pH at 7 is good, pH 6.5 they still work, but the lower you go in terms of pH, and the hardest it is for the bacteria to grow and to do their job. A pH that is high is recommended for the bacteria. You know, 7.5 is excellent. I'm talking about the bacteria that are wanted into an aquaponic setup. I'm talking about bacteria that are doing the nitrification, so transforming the ammonia into nitrate and the nitrate into nitrate. So those bacteria, they need a pH that is a little bit high, and if you put a lot of acid into your aquaponic setup at once, you may kill the bacteria. And if you kill those bacteria, what is going to happen is that you're going to have a peak of ammonia, because all the ammonia that is generated by the fish is not removed anymore by the bacteria. They are not doing the job anymore. And therefore, the ammonia is going to go to the roof and it's going to kill your fish. So if you use acid, you can use acid, but follow my recommendation. My recommendation is, first, use an acid that is safe, right? There are some acids that you don't want to have into your aquaponic setup. So what I would recommend is to use phosphoric acid, because it's only phosphorus. Phosphorus is needed for the plant to grow. So that's the kind of things that you can use, but be very careful. When you use your acid, you don't want to add the acid directly into your aquaponic setup. What you can do, you have a container, you fill it with water, and you put a little bit of acid into this water to decrease the pH of the water that you're going to add into your setup. So maybe you want to decrease it at 6 if your pH into the setup is already very high, but don't go too low. And then you use this water to renew the water into your aquaponic setup. So each time you add water, because there is some evaporation into your aquaponic setup, you add water with a pH that is lowered thanks to the phosphoric acid. That's one way to do it. In this case, you don't add the pure acid into the aquaponic setup, because adding the pure acid into the aquaponic setup is the best way to, at one point, dropping the pH and killing the bacteria, and basically then that would be a big drama, because then you don't know where to put your fish. If you have the ammonia that start to raise, you have one aquaponic setup, your fish are going to die. So don't do that, right? You just use another tank, different tank, where you prepare the water that you're going to use for your aquaponic setup. You lower the pH at 6 and you use this water for your aquaponic setup. That's probably the best way to do it, but if you have a lot of limestone into your aquaponic setup, there is nothing you can do to decrease the pH. Either you work with the aquaponic setup as it is. It means that if it's 7.5 already, you can work with an aquaponic setup at 7.5. That's fine, you can manage that. Maybe there are a few plants, such as strawberries, that are going to struggle a bit because they like a pH that is a bit lower. But most of the vegetables are going to be okay. So you can definitely work with it. And maybe in a few years, you know, the limestone is slowly going to decrease, the quantity is going to decrease slowly thanks to the biological reactions, and your pH is going to decrease. The other way is obviously to remove all the media and to renew the media. And I know that's a big job, but also that's the reason why I make all those videos, is to give you the advice before you make the mistake. So if you watch my videos before making or doing things, you will avoid those kind of big headache of having to redo all the media, and if you got a big aquaponic setup, it can be a lot of work. That's it for the pH for today. I hope it helps you. I think it's quite simple. If you follow all my recommendations, the only thing you have to do again is to increase the pH and never decrease. If you find this video useful, please give me a like again and share this video. If you have any question about the pH, please leave me a comment below the video. Let me know exactly what you are doing in your aquaponic setup to balance your pH, because here I gave you a few tricks. Another way to lower the pH, I'm thinking about it now, is to add some peat into the water. So instead of adding some acid, you just add some peat into the water, And in this case, it's going to lower the water naturally, so that's a bit better, I think. But the only thing is that it's going to give a little tint into your water. So your water is going to be a bit brown, not completely brown, but it may give a bit of color into your water. So that's maybe not something that you want, but that's definitely more natural than using phosphoric acid. If you enjoyed the video, give me a like, and don't forget that you can have all the bonus from the description of the video, so just below, if you are watching on YouTube. One of the bonus is a complete guide to build your own aquaponics setup. So I really recommend you to use this guide if you plan to build your aquaponics setup in the next months. Thanks for watching the video. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you learned a few things, and please leave me some comments below in the description of the video. I also wanted to show you my little baby chicken, the new one. Thank you for watching the video. I really hope you enjoyed it. Don't forget to get your free gift from this screen. You can also leave me a comment below the video, subscribe to the channel, and see my last video. I really hope to see you soon, and I wish you a fantastic success with aquaponics. Have a good crop!